So my name is Gabriella Salvatore, and I originally met Dario and team when I was at Takeda Oncology as a patient advocate, and then actually decided to go back to my first career as a consultant and transitioned back to Vantage Partners, which is a global training and organizational development firm. But Dario said I could come anyway, so I'm very grateful for that. We're going to do a quick round of introductions, and then we're going to dive into our topic, which is really about moving beyond pill to care. What does that mean from a patient perspective? So we'll start over here. Laura, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. My name is Laura Greco, and a little over 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with non-small cell lung cancer. And since October 2016, it's been stage 4 lung cancer. And in addition to fighting for my own life, I do a lot of patient advocacy and try to put the patient perspective in pharmaceuticals and medical health care.
Okay, so my name is Ana Maria ARBOLEDA. I have been the last 10 years working with supporting Pharma to have a holistic approach to patient solutions. So I have worked in an agency, also within Pharma, and as a consultant. And well, the patients are my passion.
I'm Claudia Put. 15 years ago, I founded Brand New Health. We specialized in change of health behavior with digital means. But 4 months ago, my company was acquired by Sentience, an artificial intelligence company. Now I have really very intelligent colleagues, data scientists, who have come up with this very smart technology to observe behavior, patient behavior, and to change that into actionable insights. The context of the patient. So by matching the two together, the change of health behavior and coming up with a lot of context and a lot of information about data, we are able to, we hope that we are able to help patients in their journey to take medication and to adjust medication to patients instead of the other way around.
Fantastic, thank you. So although we don't have a disclosure slide behind us, I think I speak for all of us when I say the opinions expressed on this stage today are our own and not representative of our own countries or countries or companies, actually. So what does care mean to you? Laura, can we start with you? When you think about going beyond the therapies to looking at the whole patient.
Well, I think it's crucial to really put the patient at the center of everything. That means the patient is really the partner in the care with their doctor. The patient input is sought in the pharmaceutical life cycle. That means from the beginning of drug development and assessing, for instance, what a patient wants out of the drug. What are the gaps in care? Is it really what people are looking for, quality of life, which is also very important, or in the case of cancer, are we really trying to extend life as well? But you have to be able to figure that out, and the only way you can figure it out is you actually ask patients. So for me, that's critical. When in my personal care, I'm very much a partner in the care with my doctor, and also as an advocate, I advocate that patients need to be there for every phase, including clinical trial development.
Laura often tells me that I created the term patient opinion leader. I don't think she's right.
I don't know what that means.
But I do think it's important to note that there are many different kinds of advocates out there, at least in the States, and I think across a fair number of countries in Europe. And there is a rise in understanding who these people are as equal, as you said, Laura, players with KOLs. There are POLs who have strong foundation in science and medicine and understand the treatment experience. And so, one of our general and collective calls to action is, are we doing enough to bring that voice to the table? And I know, Ana Maria, you think about this every day, and programmatically as well as specifically. So do you want to share a little bit about what care means?
Absolutely. Well, in fact, I think that it's also about understanding what are the challenges of the patients, and this can be on the emotional side. How do I understand my disease? How do I face my situation or the long-term conditions? Also about how to manage a device, or how to manage side effects, how to live with certain new therapies, and also the relationship with the healthcare environment. If the hospital is far, if I need to have someone coming with me, if I need to be one full day at the hospital every week or every month. So if we really understand what the challenges are, so we can build up solutions to help them living a better experience while they have a disease. And I think this is what care means. So working with the stakeholders in order to support them better, yeah.
Right. And from a health psychology perspective, how do we think about care? What does it look like in action?
Yeah, when I first heard the term patient-centric, I was like, how can it be otherwise than not patient-centric?
Oh, I can tell you.
Because, you do put the patient in the center, but then I realized when I started working in the hospital many years ago, also with cancer patients, most of the healthcare professionals, they work from a medical framework, and that's fixing things. When there is a problem, it needs to be fixed. When there is a diagnosis, it needs to be cured. And when there is a side effect, it needs to be, taken away in a very simplistic way. And so I realized when I was called into the team, mostly it was like, Claudia, fix it, make it. But actually, what they were trying to ask was help us understand, because for us it's only like, also in technology now, very often it's 1 or 0. And that's what I find amazing, because what do patients want? Respect, involvement. They want to be supported, listened to. But how do you do that as a healthcare professional? And what do you do with the answers then that come? It's very difficult to turn that into something to do with, something actionable. And that's why with Brand New Health, we always wanted to offer reliable interventions that were also scalable. Because you can do that as a healthcare professional, but how can you make sure that all the patients benefit from the most of the insights that we have and adjust it to the patients?
So I'm going to just say to the audience that we have an audience participation session included in this time. So start thinking about your questions, because we would love to engage your thoughts. We're just giving you the heads up. It's going to be your turn soon. But turning back to you for just a moment, if I could, Claudia, to ask, you mentioned this issue of data, being able to gather insights from it. One of the sort of hot topic or lightning rod topics that we sometimes bump into in the patient communities is who owns what data and who gets to use it in which way and what insights actually matter. So from your experience, what have you seen, and if there's a best practice, what is it, and thoughts?
Well, usually those discussions, they start out very easily. The patient owns the data. But then, who is able to do something with the data, and for what purpose? And does the patient need to understand all the purposes? Because for many companies, data companies, it's not even clear for them. For artificial intelligence, a company I work now, we have to be able to demonstrate what the artificial intelligence will be doing with the data, step by step. if we want to be in any way FDA supported, we have to be able to demonstrate that. And that's a challenge because earlier on, experts were also saying, well, the real advantage of artificial intelligence is that it can do so much more than what we can. So will we be able to understand what's happening? So I think there are many, many challenges there. But in the end, it needs to be done for the better for the patient.
So Laura, specifically in the lung cancer space, and one thing that Laura will share more about tomorrow, I think, is that the kind of lung cancer that she has is based on a genetic mutation. And if any of your minds went to, well, she doesn't look like a smoker, there are many, many people who get lung cancer who are not smokers because of genetic mutations or genetic transmutations, meaning genes flip-flop spaces from where they're supposed to be. So specific to the lung cancer community that you are a part of, ALK positive, can you say a little bit about what is that community's view on the data question?
That's a great question. We view it as ours, and we view, so just as background, I have ALK positive lung cancer, something that about 5% of non-small cell lung cancer has. And there are several groups on social media worldwide that collect together, and we're trying to become active and motivate and accelerate research and share what we know. There's a suspicion of the reasons that pharmaceutical companies or others are collecting our data, and a real frustration that when we share our data, it goes into something like a black hole, and we never see it again. Even though you know it's going to be used for research, it really would be nice to get the fruits of that labor, so to speak. I'll give you an example that just happened to me within the past couple months. As part of what I do, I get I do a reporter, which is every single scientific article on ALK-related lung cancer that comes in within like a month. We report it and I read it. And a few months ago, I noticed an article by the fellow at the hospital I go to that addressed specifically my situation and used patients within the time frame that I was a patient, and I'm currently a patient. Dollars to Donuts, I'm part of that study. And I had to learn about it by reading it myself. Why is it that doctors aren't circling back to patients and saying, hey, we just found out that you have X, Y, Z, and this, look at the trends we're discovering with this. Why are they leaving it to a patient to have to find this information? And by the way, oftentimes this is behind a paywall, so we can't even easily find it. We have a long way to go as a society before we really truly can call anything patient-centric, in my opinion, and I think in every patient's opinion.
I think the analog to this also, just to note, is phase 4 observational trials in the pharmaceutical setting. So you have a really interesting one that's clinic-based, but it also happens in our organizations. And clinical trials, a little bit different because the patient gets more touches and more opportunity to dialogue, but I know one of the frustrations the community has expressed is you've released a press release, you're going to a big scientific conference, you're gonna share the data, how come the KOLs get to have an ad board the day before and get to see the data, and those of us who participated and given the data are not? Why is that okay? And I think it's a really hard question, and it's a really important question for us as pharmaceutical representatives to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, how do we work with our compliance colleagues, our regulatory colleagues, our legal colleagues, who are afraid we're gonna do something that's gonna put the company at risk while still being collaborative with the communities that we serve? Do you wanna add a word?
Yeah, in fact, I think that we can't forget that we all can be patients, one day, or we can have a mother, a father, a brother that would be a patient, and then think, how would I like to be treated? And when I hear what you're saying, you say, it's not only lack of empathy, but only understanding that I can be in the same position, and it's a matter of respect of if you participated in that study to tell you what are the results, but also because I can be in the same position. So then we as working in pharma, we also have this commitment to work with our end user in a respectful way. I consider that this is basic.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this is part of the reason why, one part of the reason why clinical trials have such problems is there's a lack of back and forth information exchange. Oftentimes, I've known several patients who have to learn from public releases that their clinical trial is being canceled. That's not right. It's not right that I have to search out information regarding clinical trials. That should be given back to me as a patient, particularly if I'm still in that clinical trial. Just, if you're gonna even send the press release, send the press release to the patient as well. It's already out in the public. It's not like you're sharing anything that you wouldn't share to Reuters or Bloomberg. Just share it to the people who actually made it possible for you to get those results. It's kind of common sense, but I've learned that common sense is not very common.
So we want to take a moment and open it up to the room. If you have a question to ask, could you just indicate to which panelist you are addressing your question, and it can be all of them. Yes. It's okay. I'll come closer to you.
You got a mic.
Oh, you got a mic. Okay.
Like she's jumping off the stage.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to make sure I could hear him.
So I guess my question is to Laura primarily, but then to the rest of the panel. So, Laura, you mentioned about what outcomes matter to patients, and that's not necessarily the same as maybe the clinical outcomes or the way regulators always look at these things. So what is the role of the industry in trying to shape that conversation? Because the industry is very driven by what the regulators are demanding. How do we make them more patient-focused?
So, I think the answer, I'm a lawyer as a background, so I'm quite aware of regulatory concerns. In fact, I made my living doing it. But the answer is that patients and pharmaceutical companies have to come together. That can be through patient groups, more formal advocacy groups, but also to make sure that an actual patient is in the room as well. And to the extent that these regulations, we need to just turn this all on our head. To the extent that a regulation doesn't work, it's in place to work for patients, right? And if it's not working anymore, let's change it. It can be done. The fact of the matter is, I've learned, being a lawyer, that sometimes we do things because that's the way it's been done before, and we know we're not going to get in trouble, right? But that's not the same as it's illegal or there's going to be a problem with the regulator. Sometimes it's just a matter of asking the regulator, is this going to be a concern? And here's why we want to do it differently, because this is a gap with patients. And based in the United States, I have more of a background in consumer finance rather than healthcare and regulatory. But even my limited interaction with the FDA, they are often like, yes, of course, let's do it so that we can make it better for patients. But all you have to do sometimes is ask.
Claudia, would you add?
Yeah, I would find it very interesting, especially because I do think with the shift towards the technology and digital interventions and the whole digital area, we are also in a possibility, in a situation that we can take into account so much more information about the patient, really the patient as a whole, not so much only the information that used to be gathered in clinical trials, which is so specific, so the patient is pressed into this format of a clinical trial, and we only need that information, and then we're sure that we can make that assumption, and we can declare this very specific aspect of a therapeutic specimen. But now with the taking into account all the data, the context of patients, their life, I think this is just one step towards really taking the patient in partnership and in collaboration to move forward into so many more new fields and areas of discovering new aspects of how medication really can work better for patients.
Yes, and I think that all this information and this data might also be very good for accelerate diagnosis. Now I'm working in rare diseases, and I found that we can use the knowledge that of the patient needs and the patient issues to help the doctors to diagnose much easier and better. Also to help the access to care, and with this behavioral, also understanding of the behavioral and the challenges of the patients, we can also give personalized solutions. Because if you give the same kind of approach to everyone, it won't be relevant to the individual. So all this information, it's also key to support better and to improve patient life.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't worked in the rare disease space, this diagnostic odyssey can be 15 to 20 to 30 years of a person's life before they even know what's wrong with them and can start some kind of treatment. So if the data could be somehow, I'm not a data person, crunched and shoot up and spit out and help us accelerate that process, it would be truly miraculous.
Mm-hmm.
Any last questions from our friends in the audience? We have time for one more. No?
I see one.
Where?
Way back there.
Oh, Aviva. Yes.
That's okay. I think the entire panel, you've been talking a lot about the responsibility that a pharma and patients to come together, and 100% agree. But there's already an inherent lack of trust between patients and pharma. Any comments on ways that you can solve that first and as a part of the path of getting to that better communication?
I think as a patient, there's less of a problem than you think there is. There certainly is among some, right? I've been told 1,000 times that the pharmaceutical company has a cure for cancer, and you're just hiding it. To me, that overlooks the fact that people in the pharmaceutical company get cancer too, as do their loved ones, and it's they would make a lot of money off of a cure for cancer, so I think they're not hiding it. But, patients are so dependent, at least, speaking from my experience. I'm alive today due to recent advances in lung cancer research, and my only hope is that lung cancer research continues to advance more quickly than my disease does. So there are many, many people within the patient community who are willing to work with pharmaceutical companies. But we want it to be fair. We want a exchange of information. There's a subset, these pharmaceutical drugs are way too expensive sometimes. And you really have to explain why it is my drug, for instance, costs $18,000 a month to keep me alive. Is that sustainable on societal level? I don't know.
I'll add one thing and then we'll move to our closing comments, which is that I think one of the ways through this is through co-opetition. And what I mean by that is multiple pharmaceutical companies in the same space coming together across shared interests, maybe to serve the patient in the sense of care, along with multiple patient advocacy groups being around that table, multiple patients, and health systems and payers. And we've been piloting this idea with a patient support, patient education program. And everybody came to the first meeting a little bit like, how's this gonna work and the lawyers had to get comfortable and all of that. But truly now, 6.5 months in, there's a lot of dialogue, there's a lot of connection, and there's a lot of trust being built between them. And so I do think exposure and conversation and engagement across those intersections of shared interests is one of the ways that we stitch this together in a different way. So closing thoughts, all of us who work in or have worked in pharma talk about patient centricity, and I don't know that there's a company out there who doesn't say we're patient centric. So our question to ourselves was, where are we falling short? And so as we answer that question, it's also a call to action to all of us for how to close the gap between what we say and the actual experience. So Ana Maria, let's start with you. What's going on? What's the gap between what we say is patient-centric and what actually happens?
It is difficult. In fact, it is difficult because the full organizations will have to embed this culture. And we have the legislations, we have regulations that are also protecting the relationship with patients. So it is a transformation. And I think that goes from people who work from patients, but also from financial, from all kinds of departments in understanding why the patient should be the center of what they do. If we were in another industry, our consumers will be the first, and nobody will doubt on asking the consumers, what do you want, before doing any kind of actions. But being in pharma, we have restrictions and it's difficult. But this, I think, it has to change. The full industry and the healthcare environment has to go through that area, and it's about time.
It's an interesting point that the consumer here is both HCP physician, KOL, and patient, POL, patient advocate. Claudia, what would you add?
I have not much to add, except for the fact that we might have the impression that the gap is bigger or that the problems are bigger, but I'm not so sure. I think we're noticing so much more, and I think because we've started talking about and listening to the different stakeholders, we're hearing more, and I do think that things are being brought together, even at this conference, as you see how the different stakeholders again and again are involved in the strategy and in examples of how we're about to move forward. I'm very positive of how things are shifting.
Always good to have an optimist on the panel. Laura, final word.
We're about out of time, but I think we have a long way to go, but it's a great start to start thinking about it. And, just there, if you're interested in getting more patient opinions and you don't know where to go, I'm available, and you can speak to me and I'll point you in the right direction. So that's it.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to each of our amazing panelists, and we'll see you in a little while.